In this episode of Detroit Performs, an historic opera house brings art to its surrounding community. An opera theater takes on Verdi's masterpiece, La Traviata. And a Ukrainian opera composer captures the tragic history of his country. It's all ahead on this edition of Detroit Performs.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Detroit Performs. I'm your host, DJ Oliver, and today we're at the historic Howell Opera House, which just happens to be highlighted in our first segment. This opera house is bringing art to the community of Howell and has a very bright future ahead. Let's take a look.
It's a great venue, really. I love the stage behind us, the old opera house, the vibe on the whole thing.
It's a blessing to have this place. This is a huge, important building. So many amazing people acted here and sang here.
It brings back this feel that we could have been here 50 years ago doing the same thing.
So to be able to walk into this building and feel what went on here and to walk in the people's footsteps that came before you, and there were thousands here, is a very special place, and it's very important, I think, to the history of this town, this county, and this state. The Opera House was built in 1881. The announcement for this beautiful building was made in December of 1880, and it was announced that two local builders by the names of Holmes and Hunter were going to bring us a first-class opera house to Howell. The need for it, I think, was great. We're in a perfect location for the trains and traveling down Grand River, and it's kind of a center for different cities all around us. It was also going to be a place where the community could gather.
It was basically a community center for the area, and it was upstairs. It wasn't in this room here. This room was usually used for retail, generally a hardware store. In fact, it was a hardware store up until we bought it in 2000.
The Opera House played a huge role in this community and Livingston County. Communities had no place to gather, so churches in those days did not have big fellowship halls. So they built these opera houses, and they used them for everything that went on in the city, from graduation commencements to it was a courthouse for a year while our courthouse was being finished. There was a 5th grade class that was held here for one winter because there wasn't room at the local school. And besides all the wonderful plays and the vaudeville acts that came here, even Barnum and Bailey Circus did trapeze acts on stage. So it was a very exciting place.
People would enter from the street and walk up the stairs and go to the different ticket offices which were on either side on the main floor, and then they'd go on up to the balcony if that's where their seats were. But at one time, that space up there held 1,000 people, which when we finally get it finished, it's only going to be about 450. The Opera House closed in 1924 and closed by the fire marshal because at that time they had a lot of gas lighting and probably not the safest place. In fact, a lot of the opera houses in the state burned down, and that may have prompted the fire marshal to decide this was not a safe gathering place anymore. In 2000, the Opera House was purchased by the Livingston Arts Council. Jeff Stamm was the president at that time, and he was also a real estate agent.
He's seen here what needed to be opened and exposed for the community. Being that this building was literally locked up for 80 years, he knew what was up here and the potential.
And the upstairs was basically used for storage. That's why it's in such perfect condition right now, as far as nothing's been damaged, nothing's been stolen. It's just the way it was when it was closed, practically. And then in 2001, we purchased the building next door with the thought that the entire 2 buildings were needed for the complex as this is eventually going to be.
The mission of the Livingston Arts Council is to bring arts and culture to the people and to the youth of the communities in Livingston County and anybody else that would like to come in and use our building and be part of it. We hope to touch on the arts for everybody and include interest for everybody so people can come here and be a part of it and not have to think, oh, I don't like drawing, so I'm not going to come in, but yet they might like vocal recitals, or they might like a concert.
We have every kind of art that you can think of. We have performance art. We do a pop-up bistro, which is basically culinary arts. We've had comedians on the acoustic cafe stage. We've done contra dancing, and now we have a swing dance class here. We have an art class and of course, the visual arts. We've done movies. We've had children's theater here. We have a current art piece that has taken over the second floor, which is called Red, which is just a beautiful visual arts piece. There's a wide range of programs, and that draws a wide range of people.
I think that people, from children, they need this opportunity to realize that they can do things. They can draw, they can paint. They need to have that opportunity. And then I find through the years that as people get older, maybe they spend a lifetime of never doing anything artistic but always wanted to. And so this opens the door for them to come in.
I think it's a casual setting, so people feel it's theirs. They belong here. They can do what they want here.
It's really cool to see people working together. People working solo don't do as well as this. This is a great artistic blend here, and it's expanding because people want to reach out and do what they love.
I feel very much a part of this community, and as the artist, I think I know a major portion of them, and I'd like to make them feel comfortable here because they need that opportunity.
It is a community space, so when people come in, they feel that. They know that they can act up, joke with the performers at Acoustic Cafe, or help each other to dance.
And people are so excited about being able to teach a move to someone else. You'll see that all over the place. Someone will do something, someone will say, stop, show me that. How'd you do that? And everyone's excited to show their stuff. It's the great blend of the artistic side of things and just the great social atmosphere.
We're an all-volunteer organization. We're a 501c3. And in 2012, we ran a capital campaign.
We started Restore the Glory campaign, and we ended up collecting, through the generosity of this community, $658,000.
And at the end of this year, we'll have paid off our mortgage. And with that, something to stand on, we're going forward with the renovation of the second floor. We want to keep the building historically preserved, but we also want to rehabilitate it so that it can function as a performance arts space.
The plans are that we'll be able to open the building up for any type of event, and we'll be able to run 2 events at the same time, the first floor as well as the Opera House floor.
I think it's going to bring more businesses downtown, but I'd like to think it's going to be good for the rest of the communities around too. I'd like to think that we will become more of an arts community, that people will think of Livingston County as a destination for arts and culture.
I'm very excited to see the artists come into this building. I know personally, because I am an artist, that to be able to come to a place and be a part of a program, whether it's arts or just being here, what can do for your self-confidence and the educational programs that we have here, the opportunity that they don't have every day.
The fact that this is in a community where people know that they can come and see quality music, and they continually bring in that quality music, and you build, a repertoire of musicians that come in, people know that they're coming. So it's great for the musician, it's great for the people, it's great for the venue.
I think the Opera House is doing wonderful work. I mean, they've been doing wonderful events for a number of years, and they just grow and grow with how much they provide for artists and for the community.
I think that art needs a leadership. I think it needs a direction. There's so many artists out there that don't know what to do, don't know where to go, and I think they need a home, and we hope to offer that here and have our doors open to everyone.
Be sure to look out for a half-hour special all about the Opera House coming up this season. You can learn more at DetroitPerforms.org. The Arbor Opera Theater's mission is to nurture and help train developing artists who are hoping to take their talents to major opera houses around the world. AOT provides these artists with high-quality theatrical performances and workshops where they can hone their skills and add to their resumes. Let's take a look.
Arbor Opera Theater was founded in 1999 by 3 singers who had finished their schooling and were looking for professional level performance opportunities. The mission of the organization was to help the emerging professional artists to bridge the gap between the academic world and the professional world.
For the first, I'd say 7 or 8 years that the company existed, that was really the focus. Just how can we provide these experiences for singers, and I think also to provide the community with an extension of the existing arts programming.
We incorporated and produced our first opera, Lucia di Lammermoor, in 2000, and have typically done an opera each June, along with chamber operas, recitals, and cabarets throughout the rest of the year.
AOT decided to do this particular adaptation of La Traviata to draw awareness to the stigma around mental illness that often results in suicides. And we were influenced by the death of Robin Williams, and also some of us had experienced suicide in our own families.
So the story has been around for a long time, and when I looked at this story and I decided that we were going to be doing this production, I really wanted to break it down and say, why is this story still relevant 163 years later? Why do audiences still like it? It has this beautiful music, but there's more to it than just the music. So when I really broke down the characters and looked at sort of the archetypes, Violetta as the victim, and Alfredo as the knight in shining armor, and the father representing society and the forces that try to keep them apart, I realized that this story wasn't so much about a courtesan and tuberculosis and death, but more about the societal stigma. So as I updated this story, I really wanted to focus on what would be a societal stigma in our current time, and as I sort of queried with people and asked them what they thought that was, many ideas came up, but the theme of mental illness kept coming up over and over again.
To tell the story in this way about something that affects so many people, depression, anxiety, not just bipolar disorder, but any sort of mental illness, it's a profound thing to have someone in your life who's affected by those, or to be affected by those things, and to share that story through this incredible music, so beautiful, but to share this in a way, I think it's going to touch a lot of people and be a really cathartic experience for both those of us in it and the audience.
I think the attraction of La Traviata is not only is it one of the most beloved operas of all time, but also it has themes that are readily transferable. So it's not just about a specific historical event or specific historical figures or something that was going on in history. It's about specific themes. Themes are more easily adapted to different time periods.
I actually knew the La Traviata story. I knew about its theme. I knew about the turmoil. I knew about Violetta's death, the stigma that kind of led to the problems that she had had with family members of someone she loved. And we needed to adapt it to the current day and age to change the story. So that was done with the goal of making it relevant to what the National Network of Depression Centers does, which is to attack depressions and bipolar illnesses. So in this rendition, this adaptation, she has bipolar illness, and that's what we're using, the bringing together of art, music, and science to really move us forward.
I really interesting thing that I found out in working with some of the cast members is how many of them have, in their families or personally themselves, have mental illness. And it was really interesting to hear what they said. One of the cast members talked about how really emotional it was for her at rehearsals because this was so personal and this hit so close to home.
Mental illness actually runs in one side of my family. I have a grandmother who's bipolar, and her sister was schizophrenic. My mother and I both have struggled with depression on and off, anxiety. When I was younger, I actually struggled quite a bit with cutting and with self-mutilation. That's kind of hard to admit and to talk about on camera. But what better place to, to shake that for myself too than with this production. That was something that for me was a long journey.
So you have an illness that's treatable, but people are reluctant to often go get help. Why is that? Because there still is a bit of prevailing shame. We're making progress, but that stigma gets in the way. As sometimes I'm fond of saying, I don't like it, but stigma kills. And in some cases, people who don't get treated even get so much in despair that they die of suicide. So we're trying to essentially use a medium of art and music to send a signal that moves people emotionally as well as scientifically to understand better, while going into a framework of I'm going to be a voice to take these things on.
We know from brain research that music impacts another part of the brain, and that people react to music in other ways and to art than they do just to spoken text. So this is a way of really moving people at a different level than they would be moved if they went to a symposium on mental illness or they read facts on the NNDC website or something like that.
And inevitably, this and other approaches like this are the way that you cut through stigma. We've got to talk about these things.
I love opera, and when I met Sean and he first started talking about this production, I was absolutely mesmerized by the idea. I thought, oh my gosh, to bring together something that was so important to someone that I love so much, my brother, with what ended up killing him, it's just meant to be. And in looking at the finished product, it was a very emotional performance for me, especially the first time I saw it. It really hit home, which is why I think it's so important for people to see it.
You can learn more about the Arbor Opera Theater and all the artists you saw here today on DetroitPerforms.org. Now, let's check out some upcoming events happening in and around Detroit. To discover more events in Greater Detroit, visit ixody.com. Ukrainian music professor and composer Verkol Bailey escaped from Europe and immigrated to the United States in the 1930s. While he is now a leader in Nevada's musical community, he has dedicated his latest opera to an untold and tragic piece of Ukrainian history.
The final name is called Holodomor, and then subtitle Red Earth Hunger. Holod in Ukrainian means hunger, and mor is extermination. So it's extermination by hunger. My name is Virko Bali. My official profession is I'm a professor at the University of Nevada, but I've done many things in my life. This is my inner sanctum, and I think the mess reflects the mess in my head very well. I worked in many places in the United States in different ways, as a pianist, as a composer, as a lecturer, but I've also conducted different places. We're looking at the opening of the opera. I was born in Ukraine. My father, during the war years, was sent to Auschwitz for 3 years. This is a portrait of my mother that was painted by my father while he was in Auschwitz. And then we moved into Germany. My father is this one. And then in 1949 came to the United States. I started music because of my mother, because she was persistent in that. We couldn't, of course, do anything until really right after the war. That's going to stretch when you hear it tonight. And where we lived, there was a piano. And so she found a very wonderful teacher from Ukraine who was also had immigrated. And he was traveling throughout Germany at that point, giving piano lessons. Really just forget about it. They can get their own. Well, my love of music occurred rather early, but it was through opera. I saw Madame Butterfly. I think I was around 7 or 8. I can't remember exactly, but it was around then. And I just found it fascinating. I found vocal music very fascinating. One. I have to find something. Back in the 60s, I saw a play called Holod, which is Hunger, by Bogdan Boychuk, who's a Ukrainian-American poet, translator, writer, dramatist. And I was quite struck by it. And then in the 80s, I asked him if he would be interested in doing a libretto on that. He said yes, and that started the ball rolling. So let's try it. Very simple piece. Tren, of course, means lament. The story is this. First of all, the background. The background is the Great Famine. Then became known as Holodomor, which occurred in 1932 and 33. Which was instigated by collectivization that Stalin was insisting upon. Private farms were forbidden, and everybody had to join a collective. There was a lot of resistance to it, particularly in Ukraine. And so Stalin, who had a kind of a natural dislike of Ukrainians, I don't know exactly why, decided to be particularly hard. So he saw this, frankly, as an opportunity. Anybody who resisted that had to be eradicated. They did it by essentially taking every grain, every piece of bread, every little bit from their homes. Anybody hid anything, they were automatically executed. And that's genocide. And we don't know the numbers yet. Numbers are still being counted, but the conservative estimate is about 3 million. High estimate is 6 or more. Now, the story itself is about a man and a woman with a child. So they come together, and she has this baby that is also starving because she is starving. She no longer has any milk in her breast, so she can't feed it. He has become a complete cynic. All he thinks about is food and sex. Food he wants, sex he can't do because he's starving. And he tortures her with that. But in the end, he realizes that he is dying, that he's not going to probably survive the day. And he knows the child is starving. So he takes the child and puts his bleeding wrist to its mouth. And, of course, he dies. But the child has survived for another day. Where does the opera fit in the evolution of my work? Well, in many ways, it's a culmination of a certain kind of period in my creativity. It's a kind of encyclopedia of the various things that interested me and the various things that have influenced me and the various ways that I've dealt with those things. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very important piece for me. It will potentially justify all the last 30 years.
And that wraps it up for this edition of Detroit Performs. As always, for more arts and culture, head to DetroitPerforms.org, where you'll find featured videos, blogs, and information on upcoming arts events. Also, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'd like to thank the Howell Opera House for hosting us today. Until next Tuesday, get out there and show the world how Detroit performs, y'all. I am DJ Oliver. Thanks for watching, guys.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.